My life began in the spring of 1957 in a small Long Island, New York town. Born at the very edge of the baby boomer era, I became the fourth child of 5, and I was the baby girl. As I grew into a tiny person, my sisters and brother helped shape my world. My parents, though living on meager wages, sent me to ballet school with our next-door neighbor. I loved to dance and thought for sure that I'd be a ballerina one day. That all changed when we moved to a new neighborhood and my parents could no longer afford to send me for dancing lessons. Nothing would ever be the same. As I started to grow and was enrolled in school, I found many interests. I was good at English and math, but didn't care much for social studies or science, but did well in them in spite of my lack of interest. Maybe that was because Dad would always reward our grades if they were good. Each A earned us $1 that we could put into our piggy bank. So I worked hard at getting those A's, and I worked hard at learning. But I did most of my learning outside of school. My dad was my mentor and my favorite teacher, always taking the time to explain things in depth to me, like the Latin roots of words and why things like kindness and compassion mattered most in life. Life moved me quickly into adulthood, and before I knew it, I was facing graduation as a high school student. I stood at the crossroads, and given the choice between my dad paying for one semester in college or sending me on a trip to Europe, I chose Europe, and nothing was ever the same. When I returned, my parents expected me to conform to the norms and get a job, since I didn't want to go to college and create debt like my sisters had done. So I worked, and I worked. I had decent jobs that I was great at doing, but I was still not full of the joy that I had expected from life. In 1987, I moved to North Carolina to be closer to my aging parents, who had moved to Asheville when Dad retired years before. I bought a small old house in Valley Cruces and began my labor of love to fix it up. Mom and Dad thought I had made a huge mistake. After all, I was living alone in a broken-down house 100 miles from them where I knew no one. In early October of 1998, my father died suddenly, leaving me in a state of grief for years to come. He had always wanted me to go to college, and so in 1999, I applied to Appalachian State University and was accepted. In 2000, I began my quest to receive a college degree. I distinctly remember waving proudly toward heaven as I received my first grades. They were A's. I knew Dad was proud. I was so excited. I was finally on the path that Dad intended for me. But in 2001, something profound and life-changing took place. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Nothing would ever be the same. I decided at that moment that given the chance, I would do as much traveling to learn about life as possible. After all, the world is our greatest teacher. After 2 long years of struggling, I refinanced my house to pay the cancer bills I had incurred and took a job at Appalachian. I kept pushing my way through with the encouragement of one of my best friends, Barbara. She had known my dad and knew the importance of earning my degree, and also knew how much I wanted and needed to travel. In the spring of 2007, we traveled to Nepal and China. We climbed the Great Wall, stood in the Temple of Heaven, and then, just as I was turning 50, we trekked towards Everest. I felt like I had reached my highest high. That Christmas, Barbara was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was devastated. She was still the voice of inspiration and encouraged me to complete my degree. In May of 2011, I graduated summa cum laude. My dad would have been so proud. Barbara died in October, and as I cared for her in her last days on earth, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. I'm working on my master's now, and every time I get another good grade, I wave up to heaven where Dad and Barbara are, and I smile. I hope to graduate before Mom goes to be with them. She is 88, and very soon I will be traveling again. After all, the world is my greatest teacher. you.